What do you call an alligator in a vest? An investigator. All right. So today we're going to talk about emotional productivity in the sense of this two-part equation. What is being emotional and what is productivity, and how do you put those two together? I'm sure you might be familiar with productivity. In essence, it means bang, you know, like in the magazines, bang for your buck. But let's abstract buck in the sense of time. Productivity is this, we believe it to be getting like the most return for your investment in, as far as effort in and the amount of time and the leverage and all those things. Bang for your buck as far as time and effort goes. But productivity is mostly only concerned with doing, and is mostly only concerned with easily quantifiable results. But I would argue, because I'm a firm proponent that life really starts to unfold in wild ways when we start living from the inside out, that when we begin to understand the emotional aspect of productivity, how then does the equation flip when we talk about how do I use my emotions to generate the most productive life, the most productive outcomes, but also just the most productive way of being? How do I maximize my return on allowing myself to feel emotions? Because, let's be honest, you know, when we have some emotion come up, this is supposed to be heartbreak, whatever that is, grief, or maybe anger. That seems about right for anger. It really is about that little forehead line. What we do at all costs is we're going to package these up. I'm going to print a shipping label and send it to Arkansas. Wherever your place of choice is. And you're like, I don't want to see it, gone, out of sight, out of mind. But that's not being productive, because that's coming from the inside of you. Granted, there's lots of things that maybe can be distractions, but I would argue that any bodily sensation, in the sense of I'm experiencing this emotion in my body, is probably the most useful, the best use case of your time is to lean into, okay, grief is coming up for me, or anger. Anger's a great one, because I'm at the ground level of anger. I have a hard relationship, not a hard relationship. My relationship with anger is in its very beginning stages, because I've just repressed it my whole life. So let's talk about, anger's covered up, but you know, he was over here. Let's talk about anger. So say something happens in your day-to-day life, you're at work, whatever, something unexpected comes your way where life presents to you something that goes not according to your projections, and there's a bodily response that starts to activate. It's an emotion, and so we immediately override it, and we try to translate that into I'm fine. I'm just going to be like this, and then I'm going to try to do the things that make me money or make me have a better relationship or whatever. But this was where all the juice was. Now, there's not always the right time and place in the moment to just fully embrace the wildness of it. Clearly, if you're in a reactionary response, maybe expressing that anger outwardly isn't the best use case. Or if it's in a conversation involving some really sticky topic relationally, maybe the outlash of anger as you are relating to it isn't what's called for. But creating space at the table for your anger to be acknowledged, because, hey, I'm visiting. So there's these really cool, table legs. They're called the Portland Schoolhouse legs. They're adjustable. They were manufactured mid-century. I got a ton of them, so we're going to put those on there actually. We need to have a seat at the table for this. You know, let's pull up a nice seat. and let like anger sit there. Obviously, maybe not the right place, but you get what I'm saying. Being emotionally productive is allowing yourself to really feel the fullness of what your body's presenting you, so that it doesn't consistently nag on you for years and years and years and years and years, because you develop this pattern. Now again, I'm by no means like someone that's like, now that I've stopped this pattern and I have all the answers, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. But I can say from experience that over a decade of creating this pattern, because of whatever environment that led me to do that, is only going to create this emotion, giving you the limitation of it because it's got a shadow. You're living in the shadow of that emotion for 10 plus years. So let's talk about being productive. If you are, gosh, it's hard not to just go to the classic examples, but let's say you are at work and whoever is in charge of delegating work to you says, hey, I really need you to write this paper on kablamo, McBang Bang, whatever the heck it is. Like, could you please do that for me as soon as possible? And you're like, absolutely. Like, I'm such a kind and compassionate person, and I hear exactly what you're saying, and I'm going to focus my energy on doing that. And the other person's like, wow, like, you're so kind and amazing. Thank you. And then the next day comes, and you haven't done it. And then the other person's like, hey, you said you were going to do it. Like, oh, I know. I'm going to get to it, you know. And then the next day comes, you still haven't done it. And then that person develops resentment, and then weeks, months, something goes by, and you never do the thing that you said you were going to do, that you were being asked to do, that you kind of have to do. That's not being productive. And in fact, that's actually starting to, again, relationally, impact your relational dynamics with the people at work, yada, yada, yada. So we're all great about talking about productivity when it comes to how can I use my energy to give my best return on investment and get stuff done, 4-hour work week, yeah. Well, what the hell happens when it's about feeling your emotion and you've been avoiding feeling this for 10 plus years? Like, of course, like, be really graceful with yourself, because we have no idea what can we're opening up, because anger is just a defense mechanism preventing you from seeing the deeper emotion, which is pain, hurt, which then is supported by some deep fears of not feeling good enough. And that sucks. But soon enough, we just have a table full of all these juicy emotions. We'll even pull one up on the corner. You know when you're at a dinner party and there's no space, so you kind of get this little corner spot and you're like, all right, sweet, I can have my glass of wine and my plate here. So we give, you know, anger, let's give heartbreak, grief. We can even give sadness, like the movie Inside Out. You have to watch that movie. And whatever else, we allow those a seat at the table, and we got to make sure that we have like a flower here or something, just so we know that, like, all right, there's something connecting us all that we can focus on. All of a sudden, we can access a much, much more emotionally productive landscape, so that we can begin to process, ask questions, deconstruct the validity of some of the stories, not the emotions, but the stories that create the pattern of just being, I'm fine, I'm not going to feel I don't even have emotion, you know, whatever it is. I believe for the longest time I didn't experience anger. And I was definitely experiencing anger, I just didn't let myself feel it, you know. So being emotionally productive is giving them all a seat at the table. And when we begin to really embrace all of our humanity, some really amazing things happen. One, there's more aliveness. When I keep putting dots there, I'm just referring to love. We embrace more aliveness in our relationships. One, we become much, much more creatively embodied and whole, like holism, to be able to be present at work, or to be able to be present with the people that we serve and the people that we help, or to come up with creative ideas. I'm not sure what a symbol for creativeness is, but maybe it's just a hammer. I don't know. Yeah, could be a hammer. We allow ourselves to be more creative, more embodied in our relational dynamics, and more present with our ability to like really meet life where it is, versus carrying around this kind of really muddy dynamic of anger, but it gets translated into bitterness and resentment that I don't express. That's not being emotionally productive when carrying that around. It's like, if you address it, obviously it's still going to come up again, but you don't need to put it in your backpack when you go to work every single day. It's not that anger stops being a, quote, problem in your life or whatever it is. It's just when we begin to embrace what's happening at this table with all of our emotions, we learn to stop having a problem with grief, or stop having a problem with sadness, or stop having a problem with anger. Because none of those things are bad, we've just relationally learned to repress them or to create separation between who I think I am and how it relates to I shouldn't feel that emotion. So when we do this type of scenario more often, we create the inner environment that is much more purified. I can't come up with let's just do something like this. It's like a recycled. We come up with as if that makes a difference. We come up with a more purified and renewed inner landscape that obviously still has lots of stuff to work through, but we're in the process of constantly renewing that, which makes what we're able to do more amplified, because the quality of doing, I would assert, is completely based on your quality of feeling. You might get good at doing in the sense where you can get things like this without really learning to feel, but there's a point where, like, again, that proverbial brick wall, you're just not going past. You're like this big, and you're like, how? How do I get over that? Well, you don't get over it. You go and give this thing a big, beautiful hug, and then, like some magical Harry Potter scene, it like starts to go into the floor, and you're like, wow, it was a trap door that all along I just needed to give it a hug. Now, it's not that simple. But when we begin to be more emotionally productive, I would assert that the other areas of your life naturally start to more effortlessly resolve themselves or find greater capacity. Your greater capacity to be creative, make more money, and amplify your relationships. 10 plus years of holding on to and developing a relationship with this is not productive. But we can understand that writing the paper, if it took us 10 years, we probably would have a really interesting relationship with ourselves if we didn't write the paper for 10 years that we knew we had to write. So if we can flip the script and begin to be productive with what our emotions are presenting us, we would discover a lot more about ourselves and become much, much more embodied to do the very things that we want to be doing. At least that's how it's worked in my life, and in the lives of countless people I've seen that have been able to really click that sort of somatic awareness into their being. And again, I'm at the ground level of this, but I think it's helpful just to get that message out there in whatever capacity I can, even though I'm not a master by any means. So I hope this impacted you in some way. Please leave a comment. I know that I get a little distracted or not distracted, but I get really excited about making little images, so thank you for bearing with me. But I'm really grateful for you all to be here and to watch this silly cowboy talk about whatever. So, yeehaw!